So welcome everyone if you're joining us today on session 7 of the bootcamp. Here's David and Becky who are joining us. If you've been on a few of these sessions before, you know I'll just start by sharing my screen for a few minutes and then introduce our speakers, and then we will go straight into their best practices and tips. So as you know, this session is a part of Bisocial Scotland. So the bootcamp is 8 series of webinars so that we can share some practical insight with you and some ways that you can kind of bolster your communications and marketing efforts in the lead up to the festive season and beyond, really. We have a great range of speakers who have been involved so far, and it's great to see that over 50 of you have signed up today. So I can see that everyone is interested to learn more about how to make the most of photography and video to tell your social enterprise story. If you have some time tomorrow at 4 p.m., please join us for our last session of the bootcamp. We'll be talking about launching a campaign online. So we'll be sharing some practical tips to build a campaign roadmap, to look at crowdfunding if you want to launch a new product or service that with the help of your potential and future customers. And we'll also be talking about online ads. So we have a really nice segment about PPC, display, and also social media advertising for beginners. So that's going to be a great way to wrap up the program. And then a last note to say that if you are a social enterprise that sells products, services, and experiences, I would love to chat to you. I am gearing up for a big campaign at the end of the month. And so that's going to be to showcase lots of social enterprises around Scotland who sell products and services that can fall under the ethical gifts kind of category for Christmas. So if that's you, please reach out. And then I would love to learn more about what you do. Without further ado, I will introduce our speakers today. So if you were on our website session, you will recognize David. He is the head of brand and digital at the Social Enterprise Institute, and he's a key figure behind Social Shifters. If you haven't come across Social Shifters before, please check them out. They are an online community and really good website with lots of interesting content. It's a place to network for social entrepreneurs all around the globe. And it's a great way to kind of take part in the conversation to shape the future of the movement. David is a digital expert, and whether it's like brand or kind of like marketing or tech, he has his hands in everything. He's also a university lecturer, so he's been working on some really good kind of video content this year. So he's going to be sharing some tips with us today. And we also are lucky to have Becky Duncan with us. She is behind OpenEye, and she's a wonderfully talented photographer. So she works on photography content and video content with some collaborators. And it is very possible that you have seen Becky before online or at events in person when there used to be a thing, because she has been taking lots of portraits and case studies of social enterprises, of charities, and of third sector organizations over the last 10 years. So it's great we have Becky with us today to talk about not just how to use imagery well, how to plan maybe a photo shoot or something like that for your social enterprise or around your beneficiaries, but more importantly, how to develop photography content that is authentic and is representative of people and places and is ethical. So great to have you both. I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for joining. We really, really appreciate your time and sharing your insights. And we will jump in with Becky first.
Okay, thank you, Jessie, for that lovely introduction. I'm just going to dive right into a presentation, so I'll share my screen. Okay, can you see that okay? Yeah, good. Okay, cool. So I'm going to start by stealing a slide from somebody else, so excuse me. With thank you to Jennifer Murray from CEIS. I noticed this was part of a presentation that was done on a previous bootcamp, and I thought it was quite pertinent to what we're talking about here today. So Jennifer was basically talking about a consumer journey, but it struck me when I looked at this slide how often photographs are used and needed to tell the story of social enterprises. I mean, we see so many pictures on a daily basis that you really need something decent to cut through. But essentially, you could be taking a few pictures of your social enterprise that gets used again and again and again and again and again. So I'm going to try and give you some tips and ideas as to how to build an interesting image library that can be used to tell the story of your social enterprise in many different ways. Okay, so I will just put you over here. So OpenEye is a community interest company. We were established in 2010, and we were set up basically to be an ethical photography agency. We believe that equal and inclusive representation matters. We look to provide positive images and authentic stories for our third sector clients, so that's social enterprises and charities and community groups across Scotland. So we take pictures like this that profile social enterprises, they get used in marketing materials, funders' reports, advertising campaigns and the like. But we also, as a community interest company, have our own social impact. So I run participatory photography projects. Now these can be for a variety of different reasons, either for advocacy campaigns, for telling stories, for therapeutic programs, or community-based social action research. Now, participatory photography programs, we give cameras to people and safe spaces and ideas, and they tell the stories themselves. Often they are really incredible, powerful ways of telling stories. Just to give you an idea of our social impact over the last 10 years, we've done about 50 major projects. That's touched around 1,000 participants, I think we're up to now. And we look at a range of different subjects. So I've done projects on anti-sectarianism in Maryhill. I work a lot with Shelter Scotland. So we look at people with experience of homelessness, British Red Cross New Voices groups, Scottish Natural Heritage. We did a project for a few years with them on mental health issues. At the moment, I'm working with Scottish Forestry on a Wellbeing of the Woods project. It's one of my favourite projects ever. It's been going for a few years, and it's basically about taking people into nature to take photographs to feel good. It's a great project. We've also done interfaith projects, positive images for the British Red Cross that was used across Europe in their teaching materials. We've ran some wellbeing winter workshops for various different groups. I work a lot with the Guardianship Group and Scottish Refugee Council. About a third of OpenEye's projects is with refugee groups. So basically, when clients commission OpenEye photography, the profits go back into providing participatory projects for various different groups. So that's the social impact that we have. This is some of our charity and client partners for the last 10 years. Some we work with again and again, which is really lovely. And as far as I'm aware, we are the only social enterprise who also deal and specialise in other social enterprise photography. I've worked with, I think it's actually about 130 social enterprises over the last 10 years. I tend to work with umbrella organisations like Social Enterprise Scotland or Firstport or Community Enterprise, and we work with their clients to tell their story. So, how to take stories that show social action, say that quick. I just wanted to share some best practice to get some good, authentic, ethical photography. Really, when you're taking pictures of this nature, you're kind of thinking like a journalist. So you want to think about who's involved, what are they doing, why is it done, what's the motivation, and possibly most importantly, what's the impact? Obviously, social enterprises exist to have a social or environmental impact, so you want to show that as much as possible in your pictures. So if you're going to build a library of, say, 20 good images to tell your story, you want to have some people, some folk. You want to show some of the work that's being done. And that can be from hammering a nail into a bit of wood to standing in the Scottish Parliament. This was Scottish Community Alliance did a takeover of the Scottish Parliament a few years ago, and this room was filled with amazing community activists. One of the most inspirational days of work I've ever had, I think. You want to show the place that you're operating in. What's the context? Are you a rural social enterprise? Are you urban? Does that have an influence and an impact on what it is that you're doing? This was for our community woodlands in the Highlands earlier this year. What's the bigger picture? What implications has it got for the community and the society that you're operating in? But also, what are the little details that you could be showing? What are the wee hooks that's going to get people interested and just make folk want to get tactile with it? Invariably, as an organisation, you're going to have events, and probably somebody's going to ask you to take pictures of those events. You've got to think creatively how to make this look good, because events can be quite dull in pictures, but there's ways and means to make them look interesting. But most importantly, you want images that display your social impact. What is your organisation about? What difference does it make? What environmental impact does it have? Are there volunteers involved? Who takes part? And really importantly, how does it feel? If your beneficiary is getting something from this, what is it that they're feeling? If you can try and picture that, that's when you start really getting to the nub of the story. Okay, so there's a million tips for taking better photographs. The great thing about photography is there's no right or wrong answer. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But I would suggest that for taking pictures for social enterprises, you want to be thinking about your lighting. Where's the light coming from? Framing, what not to include in your picture, and your composition. So there's various different tips and techniques online that you can use for this. If you're taking pictures that need to be disseminated and shared widely, you're probably going to have an element of post-production that's involved. So you might take 500 pictures in a day's event, and you only need 50. So your selection process is quite important. You need to be editing and cropping and maximising the potential look of the image. But for this genre, we're really talking social documentary. So don't go heavy on the filters. Keep it as natural as possible. Invariably, somebody that you're taking a picture of will ask you to airbrush, old terminology, airbrush out a double chin or whatever. Go natural. And you want to file things well as well. There's nothing like taking a picture and then 4 years down the line trying to remember where you filed it. So yeah, keep a good record of where things are. Now, as a photographer, you have a responsibility to the people that you're taking pictures of. And this is something that I take really seriously, really seriously. And it will hold me back if I start getting a bit preachy here. But essentially, the difference between photographs for social enterprises is you have to show a degree of empathy in what you're doing. So you have empathy towards your client for the pictures, be that yourself, or the pictures that you need to take, empathy towards the people that you're depicting, and empathy towards the viewer. What is it that the viewer needs to see, and how do you need to feel about them? So your ethical considerations. You need to tell an accurate story. You need to tell the truth. You need to represent diversity, the full breadth of diversity that we have in Scotland. And you need to be making sure that you have full informed consent from the people that are involved in the pictures. That means them understanding that they may be seen as the face of something. If you're on a homelessness project, does the person involved really want to be seen as the face of homelessness for the next 5, 6, 7 years? Maybe they do now, but will they in a few years' time? So you have to make sure that people understand the implications of what they're being involved in, and also give them the right to withdraw consent at any point. So in 2016, I think it was, the GDPR regulations came into play, where if you display photographs, you have a responsibility to get signed permission from anybody that's involved in the pictures. And as part of that agreement, they need to be able to contact somebody to say, I've changed my mind, I revoke my permission, please take the photographs down. Obviously that causes problems if there's printed materials on the go. But yeah, it's something that you need to be aware of if you're taking pictures of people. Other things that you need to be aware of include copyright and legacy usage of the images. I've also put down here COVID-19 precautions, because in this point in time, we need to be careful ourselves as we take pictures, and we need to be careful for the people that we're taking pictures of, obviously. The regulations are changing so often, though. I've not put down, I'm not mentioning any tiers or anything like that. There's COVID-19 precautions. Check out what you're responsible for, basically. But I want to touch on a little bit more on copyright, because it's very important in this day and age. Here is an example of a photograph which I took, I think it was in 2013. I think I took the picture for Firstport. Firstport were the commissioning organisation. And this is a picture of one of the most inspirational ladies I've ever met. This is Vicky McCarthy from Reach for Autism from Greenock. She started up a fantastic social enterprise that basically provides support for families with people who have autism in them. And Vicky's done incredible things, and she's a complete social entrepreneur at heart. and I really enjoyed meeting her and taking a picture and working with her at later times. This picture has done the rounds. So it was used by Firstport, and then I think it was used by Social Enterprise Scotland. And then it was passed on to the Scottish Government, and it's been used a number of different times. Now, each time it's been used that I've seen it, it's to promote social enterprise and to promote the work that Vicky's doing. So that's fine. That's initially what the image was taken for. But I do retain copyright as photographer, and photographers should always retain copyright. And there's parameters within which this should be used. If this was ever used negatively, then I should have the permission to revoke. I should be able to revoke that permission for usage of the image. As it stands at the moment, it just gets used and I don't get credited, which is a little bugbear for me, but it's not that serious. But I'd like to give you an example of something that is a bit more serious. This is a photograph of a lady called Mercy Baguma. I took this photograph last year for the Refugee Survival Trust. Mercy was a model for the Refugee Survival Trust, and she wanted to show the great work that they did. Unfortunately, Mercy died this year in terrible circumstances, and it was reported in the press. I knew Mercy from taking her picture over a few occasions, and I tweeted out this picture to say how sorry I was that she died. The picture was taken up by a charity and lots of other media outlets, and I had to work for the next week to make sure that this picture did not do anything against the memory of legacy of Mercy and her child. Basically, the likes of the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Times wanted to run some really derogatory newspaper columns, and I had to pull back and make sure that this image didn't get used in the wrong way. So I gave permission to the organisations that I trusted, journalists that I knew were going to be good, like at the Guardian and the Herald and the Ferret and the Sunday Post, and I revoked permission for the other ones. So this is an example of, I took a picture for a certain reason and then it got used for something else. And because I had copyright, I was able to control the use, and I had a responsibility to Mercy to make sure that her image and her memory was used properly. So even though you might be taking a picture of something that you think is not that relevant or important, in years to come it might be. So just keep an eye on your copyright and understand the ethics of what it is that you're doing. So in summary, telling stories of social action through your photography. Best practice for good, authentic, ethical images. You want to show a collection of images, ideally in your library. So you want to say, aim for about 20, 25 images a year if you can, that show the breadth of the work that you're doing. And in these images, you want to have some pictures of people. Who is a social entrepreneur? Who are the beneficiaries? Who are the volunteers or the staff or the workers that are helping to make this happen? What is the work that's being done? Can you illustrate exactly the little wee details and the bigger picture of that work that's being done? In what place is this work being done? Is it relevant that it's a community group up in Bankery, or is it something that's Scotland-wide? There's lots of practical photo tips that you can look at to improve your photography. There's lots of post-production techniques that can be used. But I think the most important thing when you're taking pictures for social enterprises is to consider why you're doing it and what the usage is. And also think about what's the end point for the photographs? Are you using it as a call to action? Are you wanting people to lend support to your campaign? Do you want people to change their attitudes and behaviours? Do you want to sell a product, or do you want to simply say thank you to your supporters and networks? What's the purpose of the image? And that can have a wee nuance and a wee change on how the picture looks. This is a picture of a brilliant guy called Itai, who I worked with many times, and I've got exactly the same picture where he looks a lot more serious, and this was taken for the Refugee Survival Trust too, and I worked with him on the British Red Cross, and we used just a smiley picture and non-smiley picture for a load of different reasons. So sometimes you want to take different contexts while you're taking the picture. Jessie asked me to look a little bit at tips and techniques as you take your photographs. My number one tip, if you're doing social documentary images, is to be inspired. Go and look at inspiring images. Before you go and take any photographs, take a little bit of time and go and look at the type of pictures that you would like to emulate. For me, my go-to is the Magnum photography website. I love the Magnum photographers. I think they're absolute classics. But I try and consume as many amazing images on a weekly basis that I can, and that inspires me and makes me work harder. Yes, it asked me to look at different editing options, free photo editors. I have to say, I can't recommend any of these personally, because I pay for Photoshop. I'm all above words, and I use Adobe Creative Suite, and it's obvious. I think it's the best one, definitely. But I did find a list here of potential sites that could be used if you didn't want to pay money. Also, there's a raft of different ways that you can deliver images. You've got to think about all the different sizes that might be needed if you are providing images directly. If you go through a design agency, they should deal with all of that for you. But if you do need to figure out what kind of sizes you need for Twitter or Facebook or whatever, this is a great site, Sprouts Social, and they've got up-to-date guides that you could check. And to get your files places. If you're delivering for print, if you're publishing books, if you're looking at pop-up banners, you need really good, decent sized quality images, high quality images. So I would recommend that you use WeTransfer for that purpose. You can get a free account, and again, if you have to send bigger files, you can pay a little bit more. And I think that's about me. Here's my contact details. I would say one final word as well, actually, a little plug. But also, I do think it's important. I think photography is really, really important. Obviously, that's why I do what I do. But I think if you're a social enterprise that has a marketing budget, just set aside, if you can, £500 a year. Get a professional photographer in for a day, get them to take pictures for your case study. It's worth it. It's really worth it. You might not all be in a position in your social enterprise where that's possible, and that's fine. But if you can, I think you should. To be honest, I think you should. But anyway, that's my plug over. And I will pass back to Jessie and David.
Thank you so much, Becky. I thought that was great and a really good mix of, inspiration and tips, and also several of us were saying in the chat, quite sobering actually to realize that you're with the online world and everything, you're actually not really in control. Like, your photographs can be used for anything, so you do have to be really careful and mindful, both when you take them, when you share them, and when you take a picture that already exists. And I think everyone here is probably guilty of not always being quite careful with that, and we have to. I'm going to jump in and ask you a few questions that I collected while you were talking. So one of the questions is how to kind of catalog your photo files. Do you have tips on how to organize them, how to share them, whether that's like naming or nomenclature, or, you mentioned WeTransfer, but if you have a drive or something like that, do you have any tips?
I have many external hard drives. So whatever I'm working on at the moment goes onto my computer, and then I have a backup copy on external hard drives. Once I've delivered it to the client, I do it through my website, which is PhotoShelter I use, which is like a cloud mechanism. So I have 2 hard copies and a cloud copy of all my work. So that's a lot of storage space, and it's quite easy to lose things. So you do need to name things properly and file it. I have folders for all my clients, and under those I have years. I usually work with my clients for a long time, and then we'll have seasons, and if they've got any special projects. When I name the files, it's the client name first, and the project, and then the year, and then there's the file number. And then I also embed metadata in all my pictures, which shows the copyright notices. So if it is picked up by media externally, then they should know who to contact for copyright purposes. But yeah, filing and naming is an admin job. Put the radio on, get a cup of coffee, just do it.
It's a job on top of the job.
Yeah, and actually this is an interesting point. When people are using professional photographers, a lot of the time, some people think it's just a picture that you're taking, but actually there's twice as much time that goes into the pre-production and the post-production, because there's the planning for everything, and then the post-production, there's all this admin side. So that's why it might seem a little expensive.
Honestly, when I hear you say a starting budget of like £500 a year to have someone come around, take some picture, edit them, send them to you, assist you, as you just say, with like, what are we shooting, how, why, how people can prepare. I think honestly, as from a marketer's perspective, that's really good value for money. So everyone today should be seriously considering to do this. And, on the press and media session, actually, Simon said that you just need to send pictures when you send anything to press today. So You need to have some pictures, some good pictures. I'm going to also ask, since we were talking about kind of the files and you mentioned that you are including metadata in the photos, how can we kind of keep track, you know, if people in the social enterprises or the third sector organization, you know, people change sometimes, you have new recruits, people leave. How can you keep track of the trademarks? Should you include the name of the photographer in your folder, or maybe have a contact document in your folder? How do you make sure that, you know, this information isn't lost?
So if you're using a professional photographer, when they provide the images, they should provide them digitally. And then with the invoice, they should also provide a license to use. And in the license to use should be guidelines as to how it should be credited. So it's different for every photographer. Sometimes it's possible to credit, sometimes it's not. When you're storing your pictures on your internal systems, you should keep your license to use close to hand. On my license to use, good practice is to show a screenshot of however 50 or 100 images to say that these are the ones that you're referring to, which means that 10 years down the line, if somebody comes along and opens up a folder and looks at the pictures, they can clearly see this is who should be credited for copyright, or can we double check that these are still okay to use? Often you should be getting an open license to use for about 5 years. After that point, you need to double check to make sure that it's still okay to use the images. To be quite honest, every few years you should be refreshing your images anyway, because fashions and hairstyles and everything start to let it be known that you're a bit behind. And even just now, I mean, lots of my clients have got fantastic image libraries, obviously, but when it comes to COVID specific relatable images, people having to renew and to think about the kind of pictures that they're sending out. Do you really want to be sending out a picture with a room full of people all crammed together working on a spreadsheet together? Or, do you know, it's thinking about the context in which they're going to be used.
Yeah, it can look really insensitive. Yeah. I will say also on the crediting point that with social media, it's easy to say a quick thank you and to tag the handle of the photographer or the videographer that you've worked with. It doesn't have to be every time you share the content, but maybe when you launch it the first time, or if, you know, you're doing a big project around it, you know, 3 months later because you have a brochure or something, then probably that's something we should all be thinking about, because it's always nice to be nice. Another question was, do you have tips to prepare people before a photo shoot? So obviously, you know, you've said try and think about the photo shoot like it's almost like journalism. What do you want to show? You mentioned that. How can people basically not be scared to pose for the pictures? How do you get them to be comfortable?
So this is an important part about taking pictures, and the difference really between the types of images that we use in the social enterprise sector and journalism is empathy. And that's the biggest difference, I think. We should be empathetic as observers, as photographers, and that includes making sure that the people you're taking pictures of are comfortable and enjoy the situation. So initially, you want to explain to people exactly what's going to happen, what time you're going to be there, how long it's going to take, what kind of pictures you're going to be expecting. You don't want to freak them out by giving them a massive long list, but just reassuring people is good. When somebody's in front of you, some people just naturally sing to the camera. They really do. Like a lot of people generally do. Some folk get a bit shy and inhibited. You want to distract folk is one of my techniques, and just to be human, just ask folk how they're doing, what they've been up to that morning. You know, sometimes I would ask things like, if it's a choice between a chocolate cake and a packet of crisps, what would you have? And then immediately people just start to think about these different options. You just want to distract folk, I think. If they're sitting right in front of you in the camera and doing a portrait session, you just want to be human and interact on a nice basis. If somebody has to demonstrate the work that they're doing, understand their work. Like if you're shooting a social enterprise that works with young people, figure out why they work with young people and what's the motivation that drives them, and talk to them about it, because they're experts in what they do. And what you're trying to do as a photographer is to show that expertise. So you want to emulate professionalism but friendliness, but really you want to get to the nub of what it is that needs to be shown, and showing respect for your subjects is the best preparation that you can have, I think.
That's great. Thank you. Really, really good tips. I can see another question, which is, do you work around a daily rate, or do you work more around a project rate? It doesn't have to be you specifically. We don't want to put you on the spot, but like in general, if people are working photographers, maybe the bigger question is, how should you approach a photographer, how to brief them, how can you have a good collaboration with photographers?
Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure how all photographers work, but yeah, I work on a daily rate or I've got a half day rate. If I'm doing a case study of a social enterprise, I'd say you need a minimum of half day shooting, so 3-4 hours to really get into understanding what it is that the social enterprise does. For every half day shooting, you have another full day of pre and post production. So you're paying for a day and a half to 2 days worth of work, and there'll be a rate for that. If clients book 3 or more shoots, I tend to offer a discount, and you'll find that with most photographers. If you do a bulk booking of shoots, then you'll get a discount. If you've got a one-off event that's really important, that only lasts an hour and you're desperate for a couple of pictures, and it is really important, then I would do it. It just depends on, that's why I specialise in this area. I love the third sector. I get inspired to see people doing things. So, and also for OpenEye, my organisation, we're a social enterprise. So every year we give a certain amount of free photo shoots to organisations that we think need it. For example, I provide a lot to different refugee organisations, so that's my social impact. So when you're talking to a photographer, find out what their hourly rate is, their daily rate, their half day rate, if they've got discounts for things. And if you've only got a certain amount of budget, say, this is what I've got, and this is what I would like, and see if they'd be up for it, I think.
Great, that's super. I'm having a quick look to see if I've missed anything. What about, okay, so this is the last one and then we can jump to David, and I'll keep a few questions for the end as well. But when you are taking of pictures of people, maybe not necessarily with a photographer, but let's say that you have a public event or you're doing like a gathering of some of your beneficiaries, maybe it's not, maybe it's like even like I don't know, like a barbecue or something like that. Obviously, you've mentioned, you know, being careful with who you show, checking with them that it's okay. Should people have sign waivers for that sort of thing? Do you need to give advance notice? If you have someone going around and taking pictures at the event, what do you recommend?
Yeah, so things changed a little bit. Before GDPR, if it was a public event or if you're taking pictures in the street, I noticed somebody talking about street photography there, that used to be okay. If it was a public event, that was totally fine. And then GDPR came in 2016 and things changed ever so slightly. If you're putting on a public event, whether that's indoors or outdoors, as the organizer, if you've got a photographer or a filmmaker there, you should have a notice where people can see that there's photography or filming going on, and people should have the option to opt out by talking to a member of staff. So that's always available. At conferences, there's usually an opt-out clause, and folk can do things like put a wee dot on their name badge or have a certain colour lanyard. That works really well, and that means that the photographer or the editor knows to not include them. So if you're running an event and you want to take pictures of your event, just make it known. There's going to be pictures. If somebody doesn't want to be included, get them to be known to you and make sure that you don't include it when you're editing the pictures. And that's your responsibility to do that. If you're taking pictures of a gala day, not everyone's going to see the notice when they come into the field. You know, if you're taking some amazing pictures of a wee girl that's got an ice cream or she's having a laugh with her pal, if you get that picture and you get that moment, if they're under 16, you definitely need permission from the parent. So I would often just go up and discuss with them. I would usually have signed permission forms, but in this day and age, I'm not doing signed permission forms because of COVID. So I'm getting people's email addresses. I would send someone the photograph by email and get a confirmation by email. So if people are under 16, you need written confirmation from the parent or guardian. But even these days, as adults, if you're showing somebody and they're identifiable and you're using them in your marketing materials, you also need their signed or agreed permission. So that was the change with GDPR. So if you're showing a gala day, you've got 400 people there and you can't really identify anyone, that's okay. If you're showing Mr. Macintosh, who's 45 and he's strumming a guitar in the corner and you've got a close-up of him, you need to ask for his permission. And if you're showing his kids, you definitely need the permission. So
okay, that's great, really helpful, and I think it makes sense as you explained it. Like it's like, okay, if it's not identifiable, it's probably okay, but better to always be transparent. If you're organizing an event, you can always pop in your emailer and then on site as well that you are going to be taking pictures, etc. And then if you see that you are putting specific people in the picture, especially if they are underage, then make sure that you get consent and have something signed. all
Yeah.
clear, I think.
It's also about, there's an element of just being aware of who's round about you and how comfortable people are, because you don't want to, if you're there at an event or something, you don't want to put people off being there. You want everybody to enjoy, and you don't want your presence to interfere with that. So just understanding body language and wee signals like shots of eyes and stuff, is you'll get to know if it's okay or not. I think that's quite important to, to judge the room.
Would you ever go back to those people once you had kind of proposed usage in mind? I guess the same applies for video and imagery. Would you go back and show them that instance of it if it was to be used as a hero in something, or an ad campaign, or?
Yes, definitely. So I took pictures recently for First Port of an amazing judo organisation in West Lothian, I think they were. And there was tons of kids in that room, but I probably only featured about 10 of them. So I'll not ask every parent in that room. I'll just ask the parents of those 10 particular children, and I'll show the parents the images that are going to be used and make sure that they're okay with it. And if they're used out with that, yeah, they have to agree to it. It's a tricky situation. On the one hand, it's great to document everything. I'm thinking if you're a community organisation and you're doing this yourself, you want to document what you can. I would just follow the rules of don't make anybody uncomfortable, just be polite and nice. And if you're showing somebody identifiable, just make sure they're okay with it.
Makes sense. One last quick question. I'm sorry, we've had so many questions. That's a good thing. If you mentioned with GDPR, with the rules changing, can you pre-GDPR or pre-COVID, like, do you still share those pictures, or should organizations be looking at their picture bank and basically be careful to not use anymore what was done before?
Organizations should definitely be careful. I'll stop here and say I always got signed permission, but I always got, it was part of my training that I knew I had to get signed permission for different images. But if you have hundreds of pictures from pre-2016 with no signed permissions, then you do need to be kind of careful as to what you're showing. With kids, they change so much. So if you've got a picture from 2000 of a 4-year-old wee girl at that fun day, the chances are that's okay, do you know? But if you've got somebody who's one of the main speakers, then maybe it's not okay. So the way to foolproof it, if you have large events with lots of people, is you don't have to take identifiable pictures. You don't have to take people's faces. You can have like the backs of heads, or you can have close-ups of smiles, or wee happy eyes, or hands doing activities and things. Like, there's ways to be creative where you don't need to show who's involved, so you can get around permissions and stuff that way.
That makes sense. I think that's a good note to finish on, and I think this gave us all a lot of food for thought. So thank you so much for that, Becky. That was really helpful. Let's go to David now to talk a bit about video.
Magic, thank you. And thanks, Becky. I guess lots of that advice also applies to video. So I'm not going to cover anything that Becky's already covered, but I'm definitely going to talk today a little bit about sort of creating video with a purpose. And Becky referenced, looking at your user or customer journey, and where video might play a part at various stages in that journey. That's the kind of angle I'm going to take on this today. Welcome to my cupboard in Glasgow. The lighting in here isn't great for audio-visual presentations, but you're just going to have to sort of bear with me on that. So I'm the head of brand and digital at Social Shifters in the Social Enterprise Institute. Let me quickly just share my screen with you. All good? And I'm going to take you through, I guess, an interesting period for us over the last 6 months. We've done a lot of video work. A lot of our platform content is video-based. A lot of our promotional material is video-based. But we've obviously had to do that with, not a massive amount of budget, and with a global pandemic happening in the background. So I'm going to show you a few examples of the sort of video that we've produced and how we've done it, and give you some kind of tips as to how you might want to replicate some of this in future. I'm also going to start with a bit of a plug, but I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to do it through a short piece of video that one of my team put together earlier last week.
Hey there, Tegan here from Social Shifters. If you're watching this and you want to make big social or environmental impact in the world, listen up, because I'm going to be telling you about Steps to Startup, which is our online program that you get for free. So what is Steps to Startup anyways? Well, it's our 8-course online program designed by social business experts around the world, packed with tools, videos, checklists, templates, and a whole bunch more, designed to take you from zero to the launch of a sustainable social startup so that you can start having impact on the world around the social and environmental issues that you care most about. So maybe you're someone who doesn't know how they want to make a difference in the world. You just know that you can and you're ready to get started. Or maybe you're someone who already has an idea of how they want to go about addressing a social or environmental challenge. Well, either way, Steps to Startup helps you balance mission and money, which can be super tricky, so that you can start having that lasting impact. Don't forget, you get this program all for free. We can't wait to see you there and see what big ideas you come up with.
So Tegan does that a whole lot better than I could do it. And that's why we tend to get her in front of camera and not me. But we're a social enterprise that supports other social enterprises, I guess, in a nutshell. And a lot of our work is video-based. So I'm going to take you through, I guess, a few examples of some of the video work that we've been doing over the last sort of 3 to 6 months. And I guess just quickly to frame this, thinking about video content types, these are kind of broad categories of online or web-based video that we can work with. Social video, of course, is predominantly what we come across online. Facebook and Facebook Live are becoming more and more popular. Twitter video, Instagram video, it is the kind of the primary format for most organizations to get their message out there. More traditional online video, I would say, are things like cultural or about us pieces, brand and campaign videos, stories, interviews, tutorials. We're going to look at a few of these in a bit more detail today and show you some examples. The future of online video, well, yeah, it's going to be things like 4K, which is ultra high definition, 360 panoramas and augmented reality. I'm not going to go into these in too much detail today. These technologies are still fairly new and not something that are going to be worth considering at this stage. And in terms of video having a purpose, well, I think it's important to firstly understand what the purpose of a particular video content, piece of content is, in the same way that you would consider the purpose of a piece of imagery or a series of imagery. I would argue that it's going to be doing one of 3 things. You're either trying to raise awareness of a cause or an issue or your organization. You're going to be trying to engage your audience at a slightly deeper level. Or you're going to be educating or nurturing those people to complete some kind of action. And from a marketing perspective, this is very much about awareness, leading to consideration, and ultimately leading to some kind of decision or action, which might be a purchase or a sale, or it might be to register interest in an event or a service. But ultimately, you're trying to lead your viewers down a pathway, starting with awareness and ending with some kind of action. Yeah, there's a reason I put this slide in. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was to remind everyone that it doesn't need to be you at the center of all of your video content, and not everybody is suited to be doing that. So I think in terms of considering the purpose of a piece of video content or a series of video content, think about this subject. And it doesn't have to be you. This is kind of me in front of camera on video. I'm just not right for it. So we tend to get Tegan, who is much better and comes across much better on camera, to be the center of our video content. So just important to consider the who, the subject, and also who it's intended for. But a lot of people, I think, a little bit frightened by self-recording and being the subject of a piece of video. If you feel like that, find somebody else to do it. Because I think if you force yourself down this path and you're just not comfortable with it, it will come across in your content. So in terms of different stages and different types of video, first stage is the awareness stage. Somebody who doesn't know you, has never heard of you. It's about getting in front of them and communicating a powerful message to them. This would typically be a kind of key brand piece. And awareness videos are usually discovered off-site. So more often than not, you'll be reaching people for the first time using either paid ads, if you have budget to do that, possibly via YouTube or Vimeo channel, or almost certainly via social media and social networks. I think there's a follow-up session tomorrow, Jess, on perhaps how you get your video in front of people. But I think it's important to understand that, yeah, they're not necessarily viewing it in a place that you would entirely control, like a website. So you need to make sure that whatever video you produce that is designed to create awareness is ultimately designed to lead people to a place where you can kind of control that experience and move them into new information and ultimately some of those actions you want them to complete on a website. So the purpose is to lead the viewer from that piece of content into somewhere where you can convert them, normally a website. And I guess a good example I can show you of something that we did just a couple of months ago. We did want to get out in front of youth audiences in particular. We wanted to do that in certain parts of the world. So we wanted to, I guess, design an initiative which helped us to get in front of those people and also helped to generate some content that we could use to kind of, create a bit of a viral effect. So there was a kind of marketing, brand and awareness raising exercise that we kind of designed to do that. And essentially it was a competition. We gave away some of our learning for free. We offered that up to a number of large global youth networks. And we said, tell us about the change you wanted to make in the world. So we wanted to focus on, those kind of young change makers and the difference that they wanted to see in the world. We asked them to, via Instagram, submit a 1-minute video telling us about the change and how they wanted to do it. And we got some amazing stories submitted to us over the space of about 2 or 3 weeks. And we had to be very careful, obviously, about those permissions of the videos that were submitted to us. And that was one of the reasons, Becky, I asked that question, was because we felt it was kind of, we needed to be quite careful about how they were portrayed and how that content was used in our own promotional material. But I can kind of show you the results of that in a piece of promotional video that we produced post that competition.
There's a common misconception about millennials is that they're lazy, that they're disconnected. When folks are like, millennials are disinterested, they're like, no, they're just tired of your bullshit.
The twin stalkers of death on the planet are poverty and climate change.
And government and nonprofit alone cannot address them.
My name is Chidi.
My name is Joshua Mangesha.
Hey everyone, Mahalani here.
My name is Ray.
Kesara Terasano.
My name is James Chiku.
And the change I want to make is around financial education.
Access to basic healthcare services.
To create solutions for sustainable production and consumption.
So there's Tegan popping up again. You'll see her feature quite a lot. But yeah, we did use a video producer to do that. So we did have a little bit of budget, but largely speaking, the content came from our users and young people, combined with a bit of stock photography and a bit of stock video that we had. And I think that the end result probably looks a lot more expensive than it actually was. So maybe just a few tips then around kind of working with video producers. I think it kind of goes without saying a clear brief up front is really important, where they kind of know up front what kind of budgets you're working with, what kind of timeline you're working to. I think most importantly, those outputs, clearly defining the purpose of a piece of video or a video series, making sure that you know not just who it's for, but how you are going to reach those users. So is it for social media? Is it going to be placed or embedded on a website? Is it going to be used through a partner network? Is it going to be used in a presentation? I think it's really important to kind of define those outputs as clearly as possible in your brief and have that conversation with your producer. Skill set is really important. So Unless you're going to a full production house where you've got kind of a series of people all specializing in different parts of video, chances are you're going to be going to one man or one woman band, and skill sets will vary, I find. So some will have all of their own equipment and be able to go out and do all the shooting for you, audio and visual equipment to do that. Some will be much more on the kind of editing and kind of back house work. Some video editors will be skilled in motion graphics, others less so. So I think it's important to have that conversation with any video editors that you're using. What type of skills do they bring, and what sort of production do they do, or do they specialize in? And in terms of getting bang for buck, I think again it goes back to your brief, making sure that content is produced in formats that are reusable. That might be that it's broken up into bite-sized chunks, or that a longer piece of video is used to create a series. It might be that it's certain file formats or formatting are used to allow you yourself to do a little bit of basic editing if you're confident enough doing that. So maybe getting a hold of some basic editing software once the first round of production has been completed. Bite-sized chunks, I think, are always helpful for video, whether it's for individual pieces and how they're presented, or whether it's making it reusable in future. And I think thinking about content or video content in terms of a series of videos rather than just a one-off piece that can be potentially reused and repurposed over time. Consideration stage. So you've kind of got them in the door, you've grabbed their attention, and they're maybe on your site now. I quite like this explanation of consideration stage video. Think of it like shopping in a shoe store, where you go to the shelves and you start thinking about what you want, but you don't want to be bothered by a salesperson at this stage. So you see a few things you like, you start comparing prices, colors, features, but you still want to do it on your own at this point. So you're looking for assistance, but you're not looking for a kind of push over the line. So creating consideration stage video is about understanding your service users, customers' needs, and giving them the opportunity to explore until they reach that decision point. So it's kind of nurturing and reassuring video more than anything else. And I do have an example of this that I can show you as well. I can find my cursor, it's disappeared. In fact, it's completely vanished. So we've got Tegan again, doing a little bit of explainer on a resource. So this is a learning resource we've got in the platform.
Hey there, I'm Tegan at Social Shifters, and today I'm going to show you how to define your personal mission. So this worksheet is designed to help you first identify your change-making superpowers. Second, it's going to help you decide what change you want to make in the world. And third, it's going to help you to develop a personal mission statement so that you can get started creating that change. So your personal mission is composed of 4 main parts. First, it's about your strengths and motivations. Second, it's about the actions that you're willing to take. Third, it's about the causes that move you. And finally, it's about the difference that you want to make. Start off by identifying your natural interests, strengths, and passions. Find a quiet place free from interruptions. Write down the answers to each of the questions, capturing the first thing that pops into your head.
So I'm going to fly through this because I'm just conscious of time. But these are a series of kind of explainer clips that we produced again with Tegan for particular learning resources. And it's kind of helping people to understand what they're about, what they're for, and also taking them through some of the key points in those resources. So I guess a few tips on creating kind of explainer videos is not to over explain, although that's not necessarily always the case. I think I would jump to point 3, know your audience. So if you have a product or service that requires a bit more detailed explanation, it doesn't have to be a 30-second or 1-minute clip. You've got them on the site at that point, you potentially have a little bit more interest level, and potentially you've got a bit more opportunity to explain things. But I still think keep things to key points and don't over explain. Use of motion graphics, I think, is always helpful to break away from the kind of the talking head only approach. So I think certainly drawing out some of those key points and graphics or visuals can help. And it can also, if it's done well, it can really kind of enhance the overall kind of production quality and perceived quality of what you're doing. But I think it's really important, again, just to know your audience, consider the purpose and the stage that they might be at in their kind of journey, and making sure that the kind of pace and tone of voice is appropriate to that. Decision stage, we don't really have any decision stage videos, but if you were to create decision stage, well, these would be the final kind of push, if you like. So you've got them there and they're bought into what you're doing, but it's really about kind of proof that what you have is of value. So testimonials and case studies are often the way to do that. We do have a really good story piece of content that I can show you though. This was recently created this with Claire Coder. You might have heard of Claire. She is responsible for Antflow, and she is pretty high energy.
Hello, my name is Claire Coder, and I'm the founder and CEO of Antflow. I started my company after getting my period in public without the supplies I needed, and I thought, if toilet paper is offered in bathrooms, why aren't tampons in pads? And so I actually left university to start my company, and now we stock hundreds of middle school, high school, university, enterprise bathrooms with our 100% organic cotton tampons and pads, as well as our patent pending tampon and pad dispenser. My vision for the world is no one ever has to worry about getting their period in public without the supplies they need.
So these are meant to be kind of inspiring stories for young people. So they're not really decision stage videos, but they're certainly meant to kind of draw people into our learning, draw people into our own story, I guess. And just conscious of time, in terms of how we did these, they were all done during lockdown. We provided a brief, and I've got the brief. I can share that with you to make it really clear what we were trying to achieve with these videos. We did a little bit of interview prep and outreach beforehand. We provided some self-recording guidelines, and again, I can share those self-recording guidelines. It's a one page with tips around how you frame your shot, how you light it, and how you position your mobile phone or device to capture that properly. It's also a little bit of advice around audio and audio recording from your mobile device to make sure you've got no background noise and that it's nice and crisp and clear. And you'll also see in a number of these examples, we've used some stock photography, some stock video, spliced in with some self-recorded footage. We've also kind of used motion graphics quite a lot. So we made sure that our video editor was able to do nice things with motion graphics. We also asked some of our participants to record some B-rolls. So that was Claire doing a little spin in her chair, which you might think is a bit of a waste of time, but sometimes it can be the difference between fairly bland piece of video content and something that's a little bit more interesting or entertaining to watch. I think entertaining is important when it comes to video. So happy to share some of the guidelines and some of the prep that we did in order to get those self-recordings that you see. And we've done a series of those. They've been quite successful. I think, are we out of time, Jess? I don't want to keep people past dinner time.
No, it's okay. I think we're happy to go over by like 5 minutes. So we want to hear more of your tips.
Okay, I'm almost done. The last piece I wanted to mention was just a video for mobile and social view. When I say social, I mean social media viewing. So just some fairly simple, straightforward advice. But I think it's fair to say that when you produce any video, you should be thinking about how it displays on mobile phone, because the chances are somebody will be viewing it on a mobile phone, whether it's on your website or whether it's on a social media platform. So it's lovely to see and view video at full screen on a television or a nice laptop, but it's not often going to be consumed that way. So whenever you're looking at, I would argue, websites in general, but certainly video content, look at it on a mobile how does it communicate and present on a mobile? Because that is how your users will be viewing it. Make it bite-sized where you can, and when you get down to kind of nurturing and explaining, you can elongate the length of videos, but on the whole, for mobile viewing and for social media brand pieces, for example, keep them short. You know, as short as 15 seconds, believe it or not. 30 seconds, 1 minute. If you can hold someone's attention on a phone for 1 minute, you're doing very, very well. So you've got to make sure that it works in that really short, punchy 15 to 30 second format, particularly if it's an awareness piece. Captioning is essential now, I would go as far to say. Accessibility guidelines are now, particularly in the public sector, saying that video captioning is a must. Transcription is a level beyond that, not always essential, but captioning is an absolute must. So consider tools and maybe a little bit extra budget if you're doing a series of video to accommodate video captioning. And I can't stress enough, just small screen viewing. So making sure that any information, particularly if it's an instructional piece of video, any information that you're conveying visually is legible on a mobile screen. Yeah, that's it.
That was great, David. And you know what? I was laughing during your presentation because there were a lot of questions in the chat that you just pre-answered. So that was kind of funny.
Well, I was flying. I didn't want people to miss their dinner. I know 5 o'clock dinner time for a lot of people.
No, that was great. That was great. I'm going to go through. Okay, first of all, I think the Social Shifters content looks really great. And when you were giving a sneak peek at that page where there's the tips and everything, I want to make sure that before people log off, they know a bit about if they wanted to join Social Shifters or take advantage of all the learning. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Well, it's free. And there's lots of helpful tools in there. If you're interested to have a dig around, if we kind of gear it towards different stages. So we say explore, start and grow. So during the kind of free sign up, you'll be asked kind of what stage you're at. So there's content there if you're really early stage, or if you're much further on, there's a lot of useful stuff in there. And what we tend to do is try and partner with regional partners to offer other support services, and we try and kind of tailor and target those services to you, again, depending on what stage you're at, maybe what your interests are. So yeah.
That's great. Everyone check out Social Shifters because they have lots of good resources on there. I've seen them, so it's free to sign up. I'm jumping in also with a quick question on the user-generated content that looked great as well, the example that you showed. I think it'll be really helpful to see your guidelines in your brief, so thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have a recommendation in terms of perhaps how, this was like as part of a competition? Would you say that people have to maybe give an incentive to have people record UGC content, or can some of the organization with us today can just ask their community or their employees or their beneficiaries record a little bit of content for us and we're trying to make a video?
I think it's very, very contextual. Really depends on your organization and the sort of strength of some of those relationships. But yeah, I think if you're going out cold, as we did, there absolutely has to be a strong incentive there. So yeah, we went to sort of certain parts of the world where we knew that this particular incentive would be taken up, would be keen interest, and sort of tailored it to make sure that it got the response that we needed. So yeah, I think it definitely helps to give to receive, if you like.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And for whether it's a more educational piece like you showed us or a more maybe entertaining piece, do you storyboard your videos in advance? I'm sure that you're probably kind of clear on like what you're trying to do and what the key message is, but I think for some of us who don't work a lot with video, like how much kind of prep do you do?
Well, honestly, we haven't storyboarded anything. I've worked at big charities and big corporates, and yeah, we've done a lot of that, particularly for a very big kind of brand push. It doesn't hurt to storyboard and to think through and plan. I think certainly our instructional content is a lot more thought through and planned. But in these instances, what I've kind of enjoyed doing is, I've found a video producer that I kind of know and trust, and I'd much prefer to put that trust in them and give them the kind of authority to make those decisions around creative direction. And I think that the results are generally better that way when you give someone a bit of creative license to use, to use their skills.
I'm going to ask a bit of a curveball question, but I know that a lot of the social enterprises who might be watching this content later might sell services. So if you think about someone like Becky who has a social enterprise and is selling photography services, what kind of video content do you recommend that they could do, that they could think about doing, whether it's educational or entertaining or inspirational?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, again, it's very contextual. It's very dependent on that service and on you as a person. I think I'll go back to the cat. It's got to be authentic. I think first and foremost. It might not be appropriate to be entertaining in a video clip, and you might not feel comfortable, producing an explainer piece yourself. But I'd say that regardless of what your business type, you can still tell the story of your organization quite easily through self-made video, and it doesn't need to be highly polished. But in terms of what type of video, it's hard to give a kind of blanket response to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Probably you need to have a bit of a brainstorm of what are the key questions that people might have about us. If it's Becky, for instance, what's my process, or how do I find inspiration, or 5 key resources for editing your photograph.
If you can't be entertaining, or it's not appropriate to be helpful in some way in your content, and that doesn't have to be video, but video is certainly one way. Podcasting is something we haven't really talked about, but yeah, there's tips and Q&As. There will be expertise or something that you can give in your
creating
content.
Something valuable. That leads me nicely to my last question. I can see that Lorna is saying, any tips around vlogging, whether that's on YouTube or, as you mentioned, David, live on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn?
Yeah, we've done a little bit of vlogging. It's been pre-recorded vlogging when we've done it. But if you're confident enough to do live podcasts, then all power to you, and go for it. It does require a certain amount of bravery to do that. But yeah, absolutely. Again, it's all about audience, and purpose. Who are you trying to reach? And kind of walking in their shoes, understanding what they're about and what they need, their motivations and or their barriers, and where they are. Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they other places? So how you get to them, the medium in which you get to them is dependent on a lot of those things. But absolutely, live video is brilliant. As a first step, maybe some pre-recorded is the way to go.
I don't know if I would be comfortable, but you know what, Chris, actually, our CEO has done a few of those vlogs on Fridays, week to week. I know he does quite a few takes, but it's nice. Like it's a nice way to update everyone on what we got up to this week. So
if you have an audience for it, like I said, you can get in front of them, but otherwise you're live broadcasting for the sake of live broadcasting, and there's nobody there to watch or listen. So at least make sure you record your live broadcast so that you can cut it up and use it for other things.
Becky, do you have any questions for David before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. It's good, sorry.
No, that's all right. I think, honestly, guys, this was such a good session, and I know that I learned certainly lots and lots of tips, and it's great to see that we had so many questions in the chat as well. So it was also great to see the kind of diversity of examples that you showed, and like I said before, lots of food for thought. So thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your tips. We all appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, I'll wrap up. Thanks everyone for joining us, and join us tomorrow for our very last session of the bootcamp. It's bittersweet, But yes, we'd love to see you there if you have some time at 4 p.m. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.